The One Million Women campaign is about empowering women to take action.
What I knew that Moon could bring to the project was Natalie had the idea, and I knew that we could actually make it a reality. As you'll see from the campaign, I think the cleverest thing about the identity was to actually give Natalie an idea that would turn into a campaign itself, really help her bring this whole movement to life.
As an individual, it's important for me to band together with other people who have a common vision to change.
So while the debate goes on here in Australia and around the world on climate change, what 1 Million Women is all about is just getting on with it.
Hi everybody, thank you for having me this afternoon. I just wanted to show that because I haven't shown it in a long time, and that was our launch video 10 years ago, and at that moment we had nobody. We were zero, it was before we launched, and the message is still pretty much the same, and but today we have almost 1 million women, so we've come a long way in 10 years. So for those of you who were at this morning's talk, I'm so very sorry if I'm repeating myself. I'll try not to, but there's bits in it that I did say this morning, sorry. Let me introduce myself. I'm Natalie Isaacs. I am the founder of 1 Million Women, but I am not some long-term green role model. I was never a climate activist, and I'm still not. I'm just another citizen of the world that has to do something for this planet. I used to be a cosmetics manufacturer, and I was a cosmetics manufacturer for 24 years. And my life was all about overpackaging. It was all about how you get somebody's product off the shelf so I could get mine on. It was all about being competitive and about, I even had microbeads in some of my products. So I was a really long way from where I am today. I had my head buried in the sand, I think. I used to think I was just one person, and one person couldn't really make a difference. And that change isn't something that I could do. It's not about us, it's about governments putting in policies, and isn't that when change happens? And I could sit around a dinner table and talk about climate change. I could even debate about climate change, and I could understand what happens if we don't act, what the consequences are if we don't act in our lives. But I could also leave that dinner table and just carry on, business as usual. So for me, and for so many people, it was dinner table discussion, but there was no translation of that conversation into our daily lives. And I think that is an issue for a lot of us. When you don't know enough, and for me it was that I didn't know enough about the issue, and when you don't know enough about something, it is so much easier to do nothing, to shy away from it. For me, I think I was embarrassed, or I didn't want to seem silly that I didn't know enough about the subject, so it was just much easier to do nothing. But somewhere in the middle of 2006, that all changed. I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was coming for a while. There were things happening to me in 2006. An Inconvenient Truth came out, and that really resonated with me, as I'm sure with a lot of people, because it brought the complexity of climate change into something more personal and something that I could grasp hold of. The media got the point somewhere in the middle of 2006. A lot of people say the same thing as me. I got the point in 2006. I understood what it was all about, and the media really helped to navigate that and to help us understand climate change from that big picture down to what it really means for each and every one of us. There were ferocious bushfires happening out of season, and there was a lot of things happening in 2006 that was galvanising my thoughts. But the thing that changed my life forever was something really simple, something ridiculously simple. I got my household electricity consumption down by 20%. I did it by just being more vigilant around the house, really turning lights off, understanding the flow of energy in our household. And I made this massive impact. I got our household electricity down by 20%. And when I got the bill, and I saw that I had just saved all this money and all this pollution at the same time, that was it. I literally at that moment took ownership of the problem. I realised that I was really powerful. I realised that climate change was all about me. It was all about my family. It was all about my friends. And at that moment, I realised that I actually had the power to do something about it. And so I did lots of research at that point to find out what else I could do. I went on and I got our household food waste down by 80%, something really big. I stopped over consuming. I took a breath before I bought something and asked myself, did I really need it? I really looked at the way I lived and my relationship with the earth. And as you do, a few years later, I started a women's movement. I wanted to bottle what had just happened to me, that this incredible change in my life, and I wanted to share that with women across the planet. I wanted to share it with women from the city to the bush. And I started 1 Million Women because I thought that if I could just show what had happened to me and how I did it, everybody else would want to get on board too. If you don't know much about 1 Million Women, we are a women's movement. You know, even in that video, I was still calling it a campaign. And a campaign has a start point and an end point. And I didn't really appreciate when I started 1 Million Women what I was really getting myself into. We are a movement building this lifestyle revolution to fight the climate crisis. We're not an environmental organisation. We're not a lifestyle website. We really are a movement. And our focus is about mobilising, motivating, inspiring, empowering women and girls to fight the climate crisis through the way we live, through every single choice that we make, through every dollar we spend. We focus on the key areas of daily living. So household energy, sustainable fashion, how you get from A to B with the least impact on the planet, divesting our money away from banks and institutions that invest in fossil fuels. We focus on the economic power of women. And we spend a lot of our time trying to reach women that sit outside of the green belt and bring them along the road of empowerment. Our website and all our campaigns and our events and our social media and every single thing that we do is about showing you how to live with the least impact on the planet. And creating 1 Million Women has been a real journey. Has been a real journey that has opened my eyes to things that I never saw before. It has taught me so much about empowerment, about confidence, and what can drive us to truly change the way that we live, to profoundly change the way that we live. But I was a newcomer to it all. I didn't know how to build a movement. I didn't know who the Environment Minister was at the time. And I really didn't understand a lot about climate change. I just knew what had happened to me, and I wanted to share that. But when I did my research, I found that women make between 75 and 85% of the consumer decisions that affect the household's carbon footprint. Women are powerful consumers and can use that power in the marketplace. We now control 29.6 trillion of the world's wealth, and that's trending up. So just imagine us using that power for the good of the planet. And women and children of the developing world are the most vulnerable to climate change. They are on the front line. So as a woman living in one of the world's most affluent societies, shouldn't I, at the very least, do all I can to live with the least impact? Because we all live and breathe under the same atmosphere. I haven't got my glasses on, so I actually can't see very well. But to all the blokes in the room, this isn't about being anti-bloke. We love blokes involved with 1 Million Women. This is just about dialing up the unique strengths of women. And we have come a long way since we launched. We are now nearly 1 million women and girls from across the planet. Last year, our social media, our blog got 4.5 million views. Last month, our social media reach was 49 million, and that was all organic. And I've just come back from Washington, where we won this really beautiful global award, a global award for behaviour change to fight the climate crisis, out of 200 entries from 46 countries. So we're feeling pretty proud about how far that we've come. And this year, 1 Million Women is turning 10. So it has really been an incredible journey of 10 years. If any of you happen to be in Sydney on the 25th of May, we're having this really big event to celebrate our 10 years, our milestone. We've got Midnight Oil playing, and we've got Katie Noonan playing, and some amazing speakers. So if you happen to find yourself in Sydney, I would love it for you to come along. In the 10 years of doing 1 Million Women, there are 3 things that I absolutely know to be true. One is that women are glorious agents of change. 2 is that it is bloody hard to change the way that we live. And 3, in order to change how we live, we have to madly and deeply fall in love with our earth. We have to truly understand that what we do in every aspect of our lives matter, and that how we live shapes the world. We have to emotionally connect with this in our hearts, not just articulate it in our heads. Because once we understand in our hearts that how we live matters, it is so much easier to change the way that you live. I know this because that's exactly what happened to me, and I see it every single day in our 1 Million Women community. It is that deep reciprocal relationship with our earth that matters. You know, if we love swimming in the ocean, we love the beach, we need to think about all the plastics that are going in it. If we love a walk in a rainforest and hiking in the bush, We have to think about all the stuff that goes into landfill. It is that relationship that we have with our earth. In the early stages of changing how you live, it is those quick wins and those clear results that keep you going. For me, getting my electricity bill down, reducing my food waste, buying less stuff, saying no to overpackaging were all within my immediate reach. And what propelled me onto the next thing was seeing a result. I had more money in my pocket. I had less waste in the bin. And I was actually feeling freer from my new less is more kind of life. It's these immediate results that I began to see the connection between the way I live and the earth that I live on. And at that point, I realized that everything is connected. And that actually is just the essence of 1 Million Women. We give these bite-sized actions with these real and tangible results, and we move you along the road of empowerment. We give these bite-sized chunks, and when you act and you see the result, it really does empower you. Our message is just act. It doesn't matter how small the action is, just act. It doesn't matter if you don't know the climate science or you're not up to date with it all. It just doesn't matter. Just act. Because that one action moves you to the next and the next and the next. That one action builds your voice and your confidence, and it builds your influence with others. And hopefully, for what 1 Million Women is all about, it helps you to profoundly change the way that you live. And waste and overconsumption in all its forms is a really huge topic for us all. You know, if the whole world lived like we did here in Australia, we would need 4 planets, not just the one that we have. 20% of the world consumes 86% of its products. Advertisers in Australia and the US and the UK spend $400 on each and every one of us every year, pushing you, convincing you to buy more and more stuff. As consumers, we have extraordinary power to shift that. You know, as a cosmetics manufacturer, I used to do 4 brands, and 3 of them were in department stores. They were fast brands. They were part of the fast fashion concept. And I would go to the buyers of Kmart and Target and Woolworths and Big W, and my brands were all in those stores for Christmas. And I would go at the beginning of the year and I would have my product, and it would have no packaging on it. It'd be this really beautiful product. It would be $29.95 and it would be Christmas lines. But by the time it got on the shelf for Christmas, it was $9.95 because the buyer would say, I love the product, Nat, but can you get it to $9.95? And can you put that in packaging, and can you put that in a plastic sleeve, and can you put that in a plastic outer, and then can you put that in a plastic tray, and then can you shrink wrap that in another piece of plastic? So by the time it got to the shelves, it was just crap, and it was with layers and layers of packaging. And as a small business needing sales, at Christmas time, I would go to the department stores and just stand by my product and watch consumers buy. I would watch how fast people were buying products off the shelf and which products they were buying. And it was this consumer frenzy. I don't know what happens to us at Christmas time, but trolleys filled to the brim with product, mine included. And by the end of my 24 years as a cosmetics manufacturer, it actually did make me feel ill about you buying my product, ripping the layers of plastic off minutes after, you know, you've got your product, and then a week later it all breaking because it was really cheap stuff anyway. If you as a consumer didn't buy my product, it would have been left on the shelf to gather dust. And that message would have come home to me loud and clear, and it would have come home to the buyer loud and clear that we just don't want products with layers of packaging. I would have not been in there the following year, or we would have modified my products to suit. That's the power that we have as consumers through every single thing that we purchase. And we know that how we live has a direct impact on climate change. When I started 1 Million Women, that was what we were selling. We were trying to convince people that how we live had an impact. Now we don't have to convince people anymore because it is just so widely known that the way that we live impacts the earth. 17% of the world's emissions come from our households, and there are 1.5 billion households in the world. The fashion industry is one of the biggest polluting industries. In Australia, we spend $10.5 billion on stuff that we barely or never use. And that stuff, that embedded energy, just finds its way into landfill. And we waste 1 in 5 shopping bags of food. And the Bureau of Statistics tell us that the biggest spend in the week is takeaway food and eating out. So when we're eating out, there is food that's going off in our fridge. You know, it is not easy to change the way we live because we have to do it in this structured framework of our high consumption society. And it's not good enough to push the boundaries within the structure, because if we do that, we go along for a little while, but then something gets thrown in our way and we find it all too hard, so we go, oh, well, I'll worry about it in another couple of months. We have to get ourselves outside of the structure. That's the key. I think as society as a whole, we have to really think about this in our hearts. It's no good just marching in the streets or signing petitions or sending letters to our politicians or giving to charities that fight for climate. We have to do all that. That's really important. But we can't do that and think that that is all we need to do, that we've done our bit, if at the same time we're living our lives filled with overconsumption. We have to do it all. We have to fight for climate action, and we have to live it too. Just think of the difference we'd make if entire populations bought 50% less stuff, if we reduced our food waste by 50%, if we made different choices to the foods that we ate less meat and we ate less dairy, if we left over-packaged goods to sit on the shelf to gather dust, if we drove our cars less, if we shared more, if we divested from banks and institutions that don't align with our values. Just think, if millions and millions of us did that, the difference we'd make. If 1 million households in Australia got their electricity consumption down by just 20%, that low-hanging fruit, that's what I did when I first got the point on this, it would have the effect of shutting down 2 coal-fired power stations. That is really powerful, and that is the power of us individually and as a collective. Climate change is not waiting for any of us, and it needs us all. It needs countries, it needs governments, it needs politicians, it needs cities, it needs communities, it needs households, and it needs individuals, and it needs us all to act at the same time. And when that happens, systems do change. Over the last 10 years of doing 1 Million Women, I have seen community consciousness change dramatically. More and more people everywhere are having this conversation, are challenging overconsumption and waste. I think it's because this issue has become so personal. It's not just this big, broad issue of climate change anymore. We're feeling it in our lives. We see the plastics in the ocean. We feel the effects of brutal heat and bushfires. We understand that we live on a finite planet and we can't have infinite resources. We're having conversations about everything from the clothes that we wear to the food that we eat, about microbeads, microfibers, unsustainable palm oil, the impacts of eating meat, and the layers and layers of plastics in our ocean. And when we act in our own lives, we find our voices. And right now, our voices are so important. We have an election coming up in just a few weeks. I would like to take a moment here to just pause and to put on a little bit of music. You know, back in 2015, there was the big UN climate conference, and in Paris. It was a really big conference that created the Paris Agreement, where 197 countries signed on to reduce carbon emissions to below 2 degrees and tracking towards 1.5 degrees. I went to that conference and I spoke about the need to act in our own lives. And at the conference, we showed this anthem that I'm about to show you. Some of you may have already seen it. It's now had over 3 million views. We wanted to do something that was about using our voices. We wanted to share it with the world and tell a story that only climate action gives us climate hope. So just settle back in your seats for 5 minutes, just relax and sing along or tap your feet to our anthem, You're the Voice. You'll all know the song.
Chance to turn the pages over. We can write what we want to write. We gotta make ends meet before we get much older. We're all someone's daughter. We're all someone's son. Someone's son. Down the barrel of a gun. Oh, you're the voice, try and understand it. Make a noise and make it clear. Whoa, whoa. We're not gonna sit in silence. We're not gonna live with fear. We know we all can stand together with the power to be powerful. Believe that we can make it better. Yeah, we're all someone's daughter. We're all someone's son. Down the barrel of a gun. You're the voice, try and understand it. Make a noise and make it clear. We're not gonna sit in silence. We're not gonna live with fear. You're the voice, try and
So using our voice and using our vote is really important. 1 Million Women launched a campaign just recently called A Million Voices, Conversations for Climate. We partnered with the Australian Conservation Foundation, and we want to get 1 million conversations happening around climate. So hands up if you're going to have a conversation with someone in your family or a friend, somebody that are leading up to this election about climate change. Excellent. We need to make this the climate election. So go to 1millionwomen.com.au, the number 1millionwomen.com.au, see the page that says 1 million conversations and click on it, pledge that you're going to have a conversation, and let's get climate change to the top of the agenda this election. Every politician needs to be doing more. Now, I know it's very late in the day and it's been a long day, so I thought we could just take a moment now to introduce yourself to the person next to you, and unless you already know them. And I thought we could just take a break from me speaking, and I would love you to talk to the person next to you about something, and then to talk to me, but about something that happened in your life. Were you always a climate warrior? Do you think you're a climate warrior? Is there something in your life that you connected deep in your heart with that made you see things differently? For me, it was that simple thing of getting my electricity bill down. Is there something that you can pinpoint in your life, or have you always been like this? Have a conversation with the person next to you, and then I'd love 4 or 5 people in the room to share their story with us. So let's just take a few minutes to have a conversation, and then let's share it with each other. Okay, are we ready? No, okay, keep talking. Another minute. Okay. So who would like to share? I'd love to have some of you share your story with us. Yes. The microphone's coming.
Hello. Yep.
Hello.
My story is a really easy one, and it's immersed in this place we are in, Woodfordia. I lived in the corporate world, was in the aviation industry for 10 years. You know, went to work in an immaculate business suit, stilettos, and consumed everything possible. And I came here to Woodford Folk Festival about 10 years ago with a guy I was dating, and just found for the first time this amazing family of people that seemed to be so passionate about what they were doing. And I got up one night in the middle of the night to go to the loo, 2 o'clock in the morning, and had a great conversation with someone in the toilets. Wandered back to try and find my campsite, as you do, try to find your tent. And it was at that moment I look up and I see the stars, which we don't see down on the coast, and the moon. And I just felt so connected to the earth and the ground at that point. So we joined Woodford, and we've been, volunteering and coming out here throughout the year for the last 10 years. And my son's growing up as a Woodfordian. So it was this place that made me have that light bulb moment.
Oh, that's a beautiful story, and it's that love of and that connection with earth that made you change. Somebody else? No. Yep.
So for me, I've kind of grown up environmentally conscious, but I'm slowly in my life changing how I'm living. And recently I was applying for something, and in the application it said, why is environmental change important for you personally? And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking how I've been thinking a lot recently about having kids, and I've always automatically thought I'm going to have kids when I'm older. So that's just part of my life. But I've actually recently been thinking, maybe not, because I don't see a future. I'm hopeful, but realistically, we were just talking, and places like this and having conversations like this are happening, and there is this community, but you go outside the bubble, and a lot isn't changing. And I don't see a future at the moment that I would want to bring my own children into, and that for me is a big thing that is makes me want to change how I live, to try and create a future that doesn't look like that I'd want to bring people into.
And thank you. I know that sometimes you can live in a bubble and you can think that everybody has got the point on this because we're all with like-minded people and this is our tribe. And but I do really believe that there are so many more people that are getting the point on this, so many more than there were 10 years ago. And I did just want to say something about your thoughts at this point in time about not having kids, because late last year, and some of you may have done it, the survey, late last year, in partnership with the ACF, we put out a survey to find out what women were thinking about climate change ahead of this coming election. We wanted to know the heartbeat of women right now. What if climate change was affecting you already in your lives? Were you feeling anxious about it and worried? And of course, 90%, actually 6,000 women took our survey in a matter of days. It was one of our biggest uptakes that we've ever done with the survey. And a lot of the answers to me were not a surprise. I know we are all very worried about climate change, and I know that our community, 1 million women, is going to put climate change at the top of the agenda when it comes to voting. So I knew the answers to a lot of the questions, that they would be high, but there was one question that really took my breath away, and it was that one about are you considering not having children, or are you considering, if you already have children, not having any more? And I thought that question, I didn't even want the question in there because I didn't think it would get answered. 30% of women said of a childbearing age, 30%, such a high number, said that they were reconsidering having children or not having children because of climate change. And I had to go on radio. I don't know, did anyone do the survey? You did the survey? We had, and we had huge media coverage. And I actually was speechless on radio because I was so sad about the way that question was answered. So, I'm very sorry that is where you're thinking. And this is serious. This is what women, and not just women, this is what we are thinking about right now. So I just wanted to add that point. Lifting it up a bit, anybody else wanting to share a beautiful story about change?
Excuse me. So I'm not sure if it's a real beautiful story about change, but it's about my realisation of changing. I've been an interior designer for 10 years and closed my business in November of last year. Because the last few years, I've started to feel incongruent with the industry and seeing myself on some really large projects, the biggest project in Brisbane, actually. And just seeing the disgusting waste and the mindlessness around it is really scary. And the fact that people just don't care because they're just doing what they're doing and getting paid for it and then going home. And I see things like 3 or 4 floors of a whole hotel just being stripped out and put in the bin because of one person decided to make a change on the colour that they wanted. And I just think that's disgusting. And people need to have more consciousness that that's reality of what's actually outplaying in that industry. So so I closed my business and making change to do something completely different now. But I just wanted to share that and bring awareness to it. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we're running out of time, but thank you for those insights. Is there anybody who wants to ask me a question about anything? Yes. Oh, sorry, that was a big. I just mean that I thought it was really important to make sure that 1 million women found a voice outside of people that were already engaged in this issue. And so, the green belt for me means that we need leaders. Everyone in this room, we need the climate warriors and leaders and people acting in their own lives. That's really important. But what was also really important, that we didn't just stick in there, and that we found the ways to connect with others that weren't engaged on this issue for whatever reason and bring them in. So that's what I mean by Greenbelt. Anyone else? Yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Jenny. Thank you. So that's a nice segue into my book. Actually, I launched this through HarperCollins just before Christmas. It was such a beautiful thing to do, was to write a book about the 10 years of 1 Million Women, but also how we change the way we live and how we make it stick. And so the book is my story, but also a whole heap of toolkits to help you live with the least impact on the planet. So I thought I'd just finish off by reading one small thing out of the book. Ditch the guilt. Most of us know that feeling. It usually comes after watching a documentary about the imminent devastation of Earth or reading about another species that has been added to the extinction list. You feel a bit sick, but it's not indigestion, it's guilt or fear. It's a natural reaction. Frankly, it would be a worry if it didn't bother you, but it's not a feeling that will keep you going. When you're in this zone, you'll probably try and change everything all at once, then get overwhelmed and throw your hands up in the air. And then it says a few more things. So don't go down the road of feeling guilty. Make action and empowerment your new plan of attack. Start small, really small. So how do we do it? How do we change how we live and make it stick? How do we move from changing which light bulbs we use to changing our entire lives? The first step is still the light bulb. In the early stages of changing our behaviours, it's the quick wins and clear results that keep us going. It's not that we need to be rewarded for everything we do. It's only that if we're just starting out on our journey, those small things that have a quick reward take us to the next thing, then the next, because we see the benefit as we go along. Who isn't fired up by seeing something work? This is where action is so important. As we've seen already, we can't waste our time feeling guilty about what we've done or haven't done before now. What matters is what we're doing at this minute. So, yes, grab a copy if you want. You want to have a read. But the most important thing that I can just leave with you today is never, ever, ever underestimate the power you have as an individual and we have as a collective. Thank you.